councillors. We're just doing an audio and visual test before we start the meeting. Testing audio and visual. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, council. It's been 6 o'clock. I'd like to declare the ordinary meeting for Blayney Shire Council for March open and much for your attendance. In opening this meeting, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Wiradjuri people, and pay my respects to elders, both parties. Councillors, just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed and as such will be recorded as part of the proceedings here this evening. Apologies, I believe everybody is accounted for. No apologies this evening, but we'll note we have Director of Corporate Services and we have Tiff replacing him at the moment. Disclosure of interest. Mr GM, do we have any disclosure of interest for the business here this evening?
Through Mr Mayor, today I've got one declaration of interest, and that is from the Acting Director of Corporate Services, Mrs Tiffany Earlham. It is tonight's meeting. It is Youth Week 2024, item 7, page 31, and the reason is a daughter is employed as a casual dance instructor for M-Dance. Both daughters dance at M-Dance.
Thank you. No further disclosure of interest. Councillors, just before we start the meeting, I'd like to make note of the event that we had today being the rededication of the Boer War Memorial. I've been asked to pass on the Blayney Family History Group their sincere thanks to Blayney Shire Council and councillors for supporting that project, which has taken quite a long time, but they were certainly very, very grateful for the assistance of Blayney Shire Council to make it happen, and we really wanted to give me the opportunity to pass that on to you all this evening. Councillors now move through the confirmation of the minutes. The ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of the 2nd, 24. Do I have a mover that is a true record? Councillor Newstead has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Ewan has seconded that. I'll put that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Councillors, any matters arising from these minutes? Councillor Somerville.
To ask in relation to the item dealing with the minutes of the Audit Committee as to whether we've been able to make any progress in relation to the appointment of an independent member to our audit committee, which requires coordination with the other three councils, and it has to be in place by the 1st of July. So I'm just keen that we don't leave that too long, or we'll run at a time.
Sunvale, Mr. GM, you've any update?
Through Mr Mayor,
in that
I
regard?
don't, Councillor Sunvale, I don't have a specific update, but I can follow that up with the Director this week.
Thank you, Councillor Somerville. Any further questions, comments on the minutes? Reynolds, good evening.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to the review of policies, I came across one today, or actually yesterday, and while this wasn't a policy we've reviewed and put out in public exhibition, this council meeting is illegal because our code of meeting practice says we have to meet on the third Monday of every month. So could I suggest for the next council meeting that we actually put up the code of meeting practice and actually correct that? Otherwise, technically, we are not following the code of meeting practice. So anyway, just as a highlight for the next council meeting, that we probably need to actually change that, given we now meet on a Tuesday, the third Tuesday of the month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, we still have the minutes of the previous meeting. Any further questions or comments in regards? If not, we'll move now through to page 11. Actions taken on notice at the previous council meeting held 20th of February. Recommendation there that they be received. No, do you have a mover for this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Move that way. Do we have a seconder? The room. Thank you, Councillor Somervale. Councillors, questions, comments in regards to questions taken on notice at the previous council? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor. The oil contamination incident cost, which is just under $20,000. I'm wondering if there's any value in doing any more campaign with the community to actually highlight, not that we're ever going to trace who did it, but the ramifications of people dumping oil and oil products in our stormwater network, and the actual cost to the community, because it's not council money, it's community money, that $19,500. And to highlight whether we can actually promote it a bit more, I know we have done some promotion in the past about it to highlight that it does, but now we have a solid figure. The other question, or a question that arises from this, is there any ability at all to claim some insurance, or have we just decided to wear this cost ourselves because it's uninsurable?
Mr. GM.
Through Mr Mayor, Councillor Reynolds, I guess happy to discuss what further communications would be considered appropriate, given we've already done so. I don't know how much more we can really do. In terms of the second point, it is with our insurer at the moment.
Thank you.
Certainly an ongoing, picking up on Councillor Reynolds' points about that constant re-education in regards to not only the Pacific oil spill, but ongoing issues like with vandalism and even our recycling activities, that people need to be reminded constantly about doing the right thing, because there is a serious cost to this organisation and the community when those things don't go right. Councillors, we're still on the questions taken on notice. Any further questions or comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Move now through to page 13, item 3, report of council investments as at the 29th of February. Recommendations there 1 and 2. Do I have a mover for these recommendations? Thank you. Councillor Goswich has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Price-Jones, thank you. Councillors, questions, comments in regards to report of council investments? Councillor Reynolds.
No one else wants to. I'd just like to actually commend the staff for getting us to this position financially, and again, it's an estimate to see that potentially we have, well, at this point in time, around about $6 million in unrestricted cash, and again, it is an estimate, so I'm not holding staff to it, from when I started on council, when we were barely able to have any unrestricted cash, and sometimes we'd fall into the negative, to actually get into this position from the last couple of years of very strict financial management to actually build up our unrestricted cash reserves is fantastic. And also just like to note the amount of money that we currently have, but again, a lot of it is restricted, so before anyone gets excited out in audio-visual land, that there, while we may have 5 or 6 million at the moment, but projected to be just under 5 million in unrestricted cash at the end of the financial year, it's not really a lot of money, and a lot of our cash, of the 32 plus million dollars, is actually either externally restricted or an internal cash allocation. So it's important to note that we're in a much better position than we were back a few years ago, but still, as in the years ahead with the forecasts, unless we get the special rate variation approved by IPART, are going to be very, very hard and tough, so we'll start to burn through a lot of that cash quite quickly and easily. So great position to be in at the moment, but we have to be cautious moving forward. We just can't go and throw away our money, otherwise we'll be back to where we were 3 or 4 years ago. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, that's quite correct, Councillor Reynolds. I certainly believe we have some large capital works projects that are coming to an end by the end of the financial year, so we will see that money shrink. Councillors, we're still on the report of council investments as of the 29th of February. Any other further questions or comments? I have a mover, a seconder. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Your attention to page 19. Item 4, minutes of the Disability Inclusion Working Group, meeting held on the 8th of February. Recommendations there 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Do I have a mover for these recommendations? Councillor Price-Jones has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goswich. Councillors, questions, comments in regards to the minutes of the Disability Inclusion Working Group? Councillor Price-Jones. Who chairs this group?
I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. So the appropriate language to use in relation to this is people living with a disability, not living with disability, so living with a disability. So we just need to be very careful about our language. And in the report around the Disability Inclusion Working Group is responsible for, we talk about access, but it's actually now under law a lot more than access. It's actually around inclusion. So access is part of inclusion. So we just need to start thinking about some better wording in that space. And also my name has been spelled incorrectly in the minutes. If someone could correct that for me, that would be lovely.
Thank you. I'm sure that we can make that happen. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to refer to number 5, which is to try and fund the non-compliant parking. We're moving into the budget process, and I hope when it comes to discussions that we can potentially look at converting or improving, might be a better word, those car parking spaces, which I think are only in Blayney and Millthorpe. But also the inclusion of a couple of extra car parking spaces for accessible car parking spaces, particularly in Carcore, where there was supposed to be one, and sadly that was never included. It wasn't a council responsibility, it was a developer, but it would be good to at least have one in Carcore, because I think most of the other villages we do, but Carcore we don't at the moment. But also in the main street of Millthorpe, whether we look, because the current ones are either at Redmond Oval or near the school and the chemist, doctor surgery, etc., up in Victoria Street, that there should at least be one accessible car park, and the railway station, sorry, as well, but one in the middle of the village, is in the central business area. So hopefully when we're doing the budget, we can potentially look at maybe one a year, and if we put them out in the delivery program over 4 years, that we chip away in the next 4 years and do sort of over that period of time, make the couple that aren't compliant, and also get a couple of extra accessible car parking spaces. with laybacks in our villages. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Somerville.
Yes, a question in relation to item 2, explore and confirm access compliance of the entrance to the council office off Adelaide Street. That was a recommendation from the committee at its meeting on the 8th of February. It's been a fair bit of time since then. Do we yet know whether the access to the council building from Adelaide Street is compliant?
As it currently
in other
is,
words,
yes, unless there's
has the
something
resolution
triggered.
of the access committee been followed up to tick that off or not?
3, Mr Mayor.
GM.
Councillor Somerville, I can confirm the access is technically compliant because there's been no upgrading works to do it. We've still referred it to our building certifier to have a look though. I haven't seen anything come back yet.
Thank you, Councillor Somerville. Councillor Price-Jones.
Thank you. I just wanted to raise, just not related to the minutes, but it probably is related to the disability car parking. I've had a couple of requests via the community recently around accessible ramps off our main street. So not necessarily a wheelchair access, but really accessible ramps for people who can't step up onto the gutter. And interestingly enough, Councillor Reynolds and I went on a road trip recently and I saw some great examples both in Cootamundra and Moama of how they do that alongside their tree, their trees that sort of, and they just run up the side so that they can actually park, walk around and actually access up onto the sidewalk, and they can't do that in either of the blocks unless they go find a driveway, which is an existing driveway which is in front of our shop. So I think I'm going to bring it up obviously for the next meeting, but it's an interesting point to raise on the back of that.
Thank you very much. Mr Director, would you like to comment?
Through Mr Mayor, so we do have a project which is the detailed design of the Blayney CBD, and certainly, so the surveying is underway, but certainly that's an opportunity for us to look at accessibility in these blocks here.
Certainly raised in the master plan. So thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Price-Jones. Councillors, any further questions or comments regards to this item? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Move now through to page 22, item 5, the 22-26 Disability Inclusion Action Plan Status Report. Recommendation there, councillors. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Price-Jones has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reynolds has seconded that. Thank you. Councillors, questions, comments? Councillor, someone here would like to? No? Councillor, no. No questions, comments from anybody?
Yeah, no, I would like to speak.
Okay, Councillor Price-Jones.
Just thought Councillor Reynolds might like to go first.
Please stand up.
I was going to say he won't know what to do. I just had a comment around the report, and we did have quite a lengthy discussion at the recent meeting around that. I think we need, in relation to the action plan, make the actions or the outcomes measurable, and the status and some of the comments need to be actually clear on what we have done, rather than as per normal business or a minimum of 2 promotional items to be circulated annually. Well, I think in a report that goes, gets some public, would be nice for people to know exactly what we are doing. So at the meeting, Anton did provide some samples, which is great, but it would have been probably nice for them to come back to this venue as well for other councillors to see how we're actually doing that. So we just need to make it, I guess, more achievable, accountable and measurable in terms of what we're actually doing, rather than maybe box ticking.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Price-Jones. Councillor.
I don't know if I was, but I will, in support of Councillor Price-Jones, with regard potentially to KPIs, to actually have some measurable KPIs with this. And I'll come back to my parking, which every 6 months I harp on the accessible parking. So to actually have some measurables, but hopefully we can progress forward. So it would be good to whether the KPIs or some other form of measurables within this report. And it's probably, given another 6 months, there'll be probably a new council, but something for the new council to potentially do to look with this system and maybe have an extra column about measurables. And not everything you can measure, as in not everything is material, but at least in some categories and some areas there potentially could be measurables. So
Absolutely, if that were to happen. Okay. No other questions or comments. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Okay, councillors, now draw your attention to page 29. Item 6, the 6 monthly delivery program review, December 23, recommendation there. Councillors, do I have a mover for this recommendation? Anywhere in the room? Councillor Newstead, thank you very much. Has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Anyone like to second it? Thank you. I think Councillor Somervale might have just beat Councillor Price-Jones. So Councillor Somervale. Second it. Councillors, questions or comments in regards to the 6 monthly review? Councillor Reynolds.
I do, but before I've got a number of questions, so just any other councillors like to go before me so that I don't,
Okay, councillors, and Councillor Somervale has jumped in. So we will go with Councillor Somervale to start with. We look forward to Councillor Reynolds' questions and comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I don't. This is one I want to raise now. In its objective 2.3, which is page on the delivery program status report. Not quite sure which page it is. Page 10 of the attachments. The action or the objective there was to support the community infrastructure projects and so on through our various programs of financial assistance programs and village enhancement plans and tourism development programs and so on. I'd be interested in knowing, and it's not clear from the status here, how we are getting on the project to try and rationalise all the various programs we've got to deliver financial assistance to community groups. We've got the financial assistance program, we've got the tourism development program, we've got the village enhancement program, we've got our annual Section 356 donations, which we list in the operation plan every year. There's lots of different programs we've got to deliver money to community groups, and I think there's a bit of inconsistency between the rules applying to all of them. And I'm just keen, and I think this has been on the agenda for a while, I'm keen that we look at all those programs and rationalise them, coordinate them, bring them into one, or have some sort of guidance as to the difference between all the programs. So it is an action item on the delivery program, and I'm just keen to know how we're going with that project.
Mr. Jam.
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Somervale, it isn't actually a specific item in the delivery program. It is, we've spoken about it, but it has not commenced as yet.
Thank you, Councillor Somervale. Any further?
No,
For
that was the main one I wanted to raise. I've got a few others, but I'll leave it till Councillor Reynolds.
Councillor Somervale. Councillor Reynolds, question, comment in regards to the 6 monthly delivery program report.
As I mentioned, Mayor, I've got several that I'll go through. I'll start pretty well at the top at 1.1, future direction. Now it says, with regard to sealed, unsealed bridges, culverts, etc., to a service level, an agreed service level, and I look at our Schedule 7, and I find it very difficult to understand, and I know we have road hierarchies and footpath, as in we have different coloured footpaths on our map, etc. But it's very hard from a community member point of view if they say, for example, see a footpath that's a jigsaw puzzle, and go, why is that particular bit of footpath not a higher priority, or why is that satisfactory in our service delivery in the Shire? And Schedule 7 makes it very, very confusing because it has two columns. One, what council thinks is a satisfactory level, and what one, I assume it's a working out at a state level or somehow else what a satisfactory level is. So there's two different satisfactory levels in the Schedule 7. I know we're not going to get a resolution tonight, but as in to get some more clarity on what is a satisfactory level with our footpaths, and then we could have a program to actually how we're going to achieve that satisfactory level, or with our road network. And I know we're about to undertake a major X-raying process throughout our bitumen road network, which will hopefully give us a better understanding of how it stands. But something to take on notice is how we can, so that we can, as a council, try and achieve a satisfactory level across our assets, which, at the moment it says we've got to spend around about 20 million on one side, 5 million on the other. So council's own standard is about 5 million, but what I assume is the state government standard is about 20 million to bring everything up to a satisfactory. So that's not new, but just a satisfactory standard. So something to take on notice as the first one. I don't expect a response tonight. Sorry,
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify, Councillor Reynolds, is it more to clarify regarding that terminology as to what is an agreed service level? Is that kind of, we can take it offline, but is that more the...
And then to follow on though with how we can get there to that service level is so one, what is, I know we have a map for footpaths and different colour codings for different standards, but one person's fall is as much as another person's fall if they trip on our footpath, even though it might be a high usage. So, but yeah, as in, so that we can then action something, but to get an understanding of how we've come up with different standard levels, and then to action so that we can, in the long-term financial plan, so whether it's the OP, the DP, or the 10 years, we can actually start to put some strategies to wind back so we don't have as big a backlog as potentially what we have at the moment. But again, compared to a lot of other councils, our backlog is quite small and constantly changing. I think it doubled from the previous financial year to the last financial year. So anyway, I don't expect an outcome tonight. It's more, can we get it on the radar, because we are doing, again, the long-term financial year plan, and again, a new council will come in and look at, at strategies moving forward and develop its new long-term financial plan about this time next year. So once it's done, it's IP and R. So I'm just putting it on the table as in to discuss and to come up with it. A lot of other things though, so I won't dwell on that one unless there's anything more. Moving over, I think it's the next page. This is page number 2 of the process. Lobby and advocate for the reopening of the Blayney to Drumongal railway line. I did move a notice of motion about getting some, as in extending the service. I think that should be included in somehow to note that we are also trying to get a morning service for both Millthorpe and Blayney. So if that can be taken on board, because the amount of lobbying we're doing, as in we're getting nowhere with the Blayney to Drumongal line, to be brutally honest, whereas we might be able to get somewhere with one of these new trains that are coming on with regard to that. So I'd just like to, as in, put that on the table. That
Sorry, Councillor Reynolds, just confirming that's the potential expansion of the Bathurst Bullet service from Orange. Is that?
Yes,
yeah.
that's the type of thing which is maybe more achievable in the short term than getting the Blayney to Drumongal line reopened.
Just on that, if I may interrupt, there's just absolutely nothing coming out of the state government about a position on that at the moment. All the engineering's done, everything's been done, but nothing's been released. So council's just waiting.
The next one, I think, is on the 3rd page. It's talking about Local Emergency Management Committee. The LEMC meetings run as per meeting schedule. Do we as councillors, is that the minutes or anything out of those ever available on the portal? I haven't seen them, but maybe they're there and I've missed them. If not, could they at least be available for the councillors on the portal?
Mr. Director?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll have to check that. That's not a committee of council. It's a committee in accordance with the State Emergency and Rescue Management Act. So there are minutes. I'll just have to look whether they can be distributed.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Councillor Reynolds.
The next one. So it mentions about a local emergency management plan. Again, is that going to be made available? I don't know whether it goes out to the community or whether it can come to councillors. And it says here it's currently in draft format. So whether we are entitled to actually see what the local emergency management plan is. From what I understood in other councils, they have community members sit on these committees. So, again, a question on notice. I don't expect answers tonight, but whether we once this draft or the final plan is actually out there, and just so we can see what the local emergency management plan is around. So if there is a natural disaster, flood, fire, or whatever, we actually have a bit of an understanding of how the local emergency management plan works. And I just wanted to highlight, I represent the council both on the Bushfire Management Committee and also the Bushfire Liaison Committee, and I chair the Canobola Zone Bushfire Management Committee. That it would be nice to actually be acknowledged, as in it's all here about staff. As in, staff are unavailable to go to those two committees. They meet quarterly, the Liaison Committee, and 6 monthly, the Bushfire Management Committee. So, and I notice another councillor is mentioned later on in the report, so just be nice to be noted. Whoever our representative, and maybe a new representative at the next council, I don't know. But, as in just to acknowledge that there are some councillors that do put in, and that's volunteer hours to go and sit on those two committees and report back to council. And there is a report tonight from the Liaison Committee that I have presented to the council. And just in about 3 items later, it's Councillor Price-Jones has been appointed to the Skill Set Board, for example. So just an acknowledgement would be nice for all the hours of volunteering. That, and I'm not being selfish, there may be other councillors that do other things as well, and yourself, Mayor, that do things. With regard to lobby the federal government for improved internet access, just something to note, there are no specific issues. I'm constantly having an issue and being highlighted to me about Kings Plains and the very poor coverage in that area, that community. So if that could actually be noted, and maybe some lobbying undertaken in the next 6 months with regard to Kings Plains. If I am under the understanding that if the proposed mine, Regis mine, goes ahead and McPhillamys mine, that there will be a tower in that area. If it doesn't go ahead, there's a reasonably large community there that is in a mobile black spot area. So just something to include on the report. Looking on my computer. One. Time. Here we go. So down on, I think it's 3.1, talks about ensure local planning instruments and strategies support the agricultural sector, and then talks about village bores. I'm not quite sure how instruments and strategies to support the agricultural sector are village bores because they're in villages. I know that there may be some water available, but I don't think they're planning instruments. So it's unclear there, the connection between village bores and local planning instruments. So if that one could be looked at. And then maintain the availability and quality of water for use in rural areas. Council staff attend the Central New South Wales Water Utilities Alliance meeting. I'm not quite sure about rural areas. What the term is, rural areas, is that meaning our council, or is it meaning farmland areas? It's very broad, so I'm just unsure of how attending a Water Utilities Alliance meeting connects back to the quality of water for use in rural areas, and whether that's groundwater or whether it's tank water. I don't know, and as you'd probably be aware, some concerns about tank water and what potentially falls on our roofs if it is tank water. So yeah, as in, can we have some clarity on what that actually is driving to, and then if it is looking at tank water in the rural and rural residential areas, then we actually need a strategy to actually make sure that the water is of reasonable quality for drinking purposes. So I think that needs to be extended, and I'm not quite sure how this alliance is potentially going to solve that issue or improve that issue. Moving on to 3.2. On behalf of the community on the corporate and environmental responsibilities of the mining sector, and then it talks about the couple of triple Cs. It also does talk about Flyers Creek. But using the word engage and advocates on behalf of the community, and it's too late in this council, but maybe if you want some people to advocate on behalf of the community, I don't think it's the role of staff to advocate, so maybe we need, or the new council maybe needs to discuss whether councillors are actually appointed to those 3 triple Cs to undertake advocacy if we follow what is here in writing. So something to put on notice for the new council, but to actually seriously have a consideration if we want to follow what's here in this document. And I wouldn't expect council staff to be advocating because I don't perceive that it's their role. The mining and related councils meeting, I don't see a report back on it. Have we ever achieved anything? I think you, Mayor, represent us on that council.
Yeah, and the report will come. There's been a new executive officer appointed just recently, and they're redesigning the organisation, and full report about where that is at the moment will be coming to all the councils or the membership pretty soon.
Thank you. With regard to work with and support Orange 360 and Central New South Wales Tourism, and then it comes across review Blayney Visitor Information Centre operations, and then it has across here ongoing support provided and attendance at monthly VIC meetings. If we're reviewing the Visitor Information Centre operations, I assume this was a review that was done a couple of years ago about opening hours and times. Maybe we need to change our wording there, particularly, and I don't have a problem in providing ongoing support and attendance because it is concerning our volunteers are dropping off with the Visitor Information Centre. They're slowly getting older, so hopefully we're getting a few new ones, but again, I have no idea how the VIC is currently performing, and this report doesn't tell me one way or the other, and we're not getting any reports. Maybe every 6 months or so we should be hearing or seeing, or at least annually, about the Visitor Information Centre, because it is a valuable tool still to connect between those older tourists in particular. As we've all been informed, the younger tourists are using online, whether it's social media or web pages or other forms of communication to find out. But it would be good if we've got it in this document that we should be actually providing some feedback, and if they need more help, when we're coming to budgets, then maybe we need to look at that one. So the next one is 3.4, implement the Blayney, Main Street and Millthorpe village centre master plans. Then we talk about pedestrian activity areas in Blayney and Millthorpe. I also understood we were reviewing Carcoar, so I'm not quite sure how that relates. And then under review by Transport for New South Wales, I understood that we'd already approved as a council to change the high pedestrian activity area in Blayney in Adelaide Street and reduce the speed limit to 40 kilometres an hour, which was a recommendation, but it just says under review by Transport for New South Wales. So I think this document's a little bit outdated from my understanding, because I'm sure as a council we've progressed on, but maybe the director can answer that question.
Councillor Reynolds, the director would like to make comment in regards to that item.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, the council do not endorse or speed zoning. It's the jurisdiction of Transport, and so it is under review by Transport in terms of the implementation stage. They are the ones reviewing where exactly the signage will go and where the design for the blisters and how it will actually be carried out. So that is under review by Transport currently.
As soon as they know, they'll let us know, I'd imagine. Okay, well that's important. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds.
But Millthorpe, I understand we're not proceeding, or we've recommended that nothing proceed, and also in Carcoar, is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, correct. We've recommended that we don't proceed with those, but again, that's under review by Transport whether they will then take that advice.
Move on. The next one, seek opportunities to build a vibrant local retail and business sector. And it says council supported initial Blayney Shire Small Business Month event, which as far as I can recall was last year, and with Councillor Price-Jones. And I think the Mayor, you attended to, didn't you, Mayor? How are we now supporting or enhancing, whether it's a business chamber or something else, out of that original initial meeting, as in, have we supported in any way a progression of the chamber in Blayney, as in there is a business chamber in Millthorpe. They do meet, I think, once a month. But has anything been able to be progressed, and can council support any more? Because business community is an important part of our main street here in Blayney, in developing this chamber. And it just says the Small Business Month, but we're 12 months of the year, and so again, whether there's an answer tonight or whether it's taken on notice, but how we can support moving forward. Now we've had that initial meeting with the business community to try and bring them together.
Councillor Price-Jones, might be able to offer into your question.
Yes, thanks, and thanks, Councillor Reynolds. So just to give you a little bit of an update on the chamber, we've just recently had a sort of an inaugural meeting, so with the view of organising a committee or a board, however you like to, and we were sort of talking about, at first we always only ever anticipated doing 3 to 4 events a year, or having 3 to 4 meetings, so it was never going to be a monthly pursuit, because people are busy, and I think less is more. So that was my sort of my preference. Whether that turns out, I'm not sure. But we are thinking about having planning to have an event maybe late May, early June. And the topic that we spoke about, we've kind of come up with a bit of a wish list of topics, but this one's around cyber, AI and related insurance, and we thought that would be quite relevant, not only for the business community, but maybe the wider community. So it is in play, a little bit slow to start, not enough legs on the ground. But that's where that's up to, and certainly will be. I'll be continuing to pursue that, and I will be looking for council assistance in that space.
Thank you, Councillor Price-Jones, and that's great news because, as you've just said, council stands by to support community groups, and I think that's as much as our role as anything, and we congratulate our community groups who do that initiative, and we all support it where we can. Councillor Reynolds, please continue.
Thank you, Matt. The next one is with regard to review and update planning instruments. Commence Millthorpe Settlement Strategy Addendum. Now we're proposing to move it to 24-25. Can we actually look at, and this will be the new council by that stage, because I'd be very surprised if we're going to do it in July, ahead of council elections in September. So we need to firm, because this is, I think, the third or the fourth time we've passed this down the road, to actually take it on board. And I know a new council will then probably have about 4 years to look at it, and it'll probably be fairly contentious, but we do need to finally lock this in, as in because we've just been kicking it down the road for a reasonable period of time. I think it was even the previous council started kicking it down the road about 2.5, 3 years ago, before this current council. So again, just to take it on notice, to actually firm up once a new council is established, that it's a reasonably high priority, because it just hasn't been implemented or activated, and as I said, it will be contentious. So probably more a comment than actually a commitment tonight, but something to put on the radar for the new council. With regard to the next item down, is with regard to the flood study. Is there any updates? It says here, project deferred until a review of the town of Blayney flood study is completed. Any update or time frame of when we'll have a completion of that flood study?
Director, have you got any updates in regards to the flood study?
Look, I don't have the project plan on me. I'll have to take it on notice, but it is due to be delivered in 2024. So we're at the data gathering stage, and there's been issues identified with the previous models. So that's going to extend the project delivery extensively, because we're looking to require remodelling of some of the previous flood studies to ensure validation of the recent flood events and make sure the model is accurate.
Next one.
Here we go. Hang on, Councillor Reynolds.
Oh, sorry.
If I may interrupt you for a minute. I
No.
believe there's a follow-up question.
No, it's
Councillor Somerville.
it's just in relation to the flood study and what's going on there. And as chair of our floodplain management committee, I'm interested in this. It has been taking a long while, but I would like to mention to councillors that I was down along the Blubula River, not far out of town, in the last couple of days, and I saw two guys in high-vis vests sticking moisture monitors into little holes beside the river. So I suspect they're doing something right at the moment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we had our surveying staff capturing some cross sections of the river stream as part of this validation work.
Really just a question around the delivery time. Would be nice to have it done before the next council, given that most of us now have a bit of a history with what happened, and it would be great to have that sort of, I guess, at least partially closed off before we hand over.
Mayor, regard to point, and particularly reporting, I have concerns about the level of reporting, and there's nothing that councillors can do but the operator to try and encourage them to provide a few more reports back to council in a more timely manner, particularly on the operating costs of the facility. Again, a comment, not a question as such. With regard to the Shire cemetery, so this is 4.3, the last point, draft plan progressing, but I understand we're fairly behind in the mapping of the cemeteries. So, any idea of when we might be able to get this draft plan completed?
Councillor Reynolds.
Just above 4.4, the last.
Through Mr Mayor, Councillor Reynolds, I think there's two separate matters there. There's the vegetation plan, which had a draft plan in progress, and additionally then there's mapping, GIS mapping within the cemeteries. So there's two separate matters there, but I know both are progressing.
Thank you. With regard to, I think it's 4.4, Arts Out West membership renewed, I think we used to get reports back in the previous council of what they were achieving or what they're doing, but that seems to have come quite quiet. I'm just wondering if there is any update from Arts Out West on, and I'm not quite sure how much we pay in a membership, but yeah, whether there is any updates on what they're achieving for Blayney Shire Council, as in Council Shire area, not the council per se, but with our funding of them or whatever funding we do put in. There's, further down, there's, and I'm not quite sure which number it comes under, the review of the Quelk facility as an emergency stock holding facility, draft emergency plan currently being developed by LLS. So I assume once LLS have finished that draft plan that Council will receive a plan of how it's going to become an emergency facility. If there's a bushfire, I assume is probably the major process, but again, whether we as councillors see it, but it'd be nice to know that there is, and now I am aware that there is a draft emergency plan being developed, so that if there is a natural disaster of substantial nature, that there is a facility that people can actually take livestock to. I assume that's what the plan is about, a stock emergency holding facility. I'm nearly there. Next one I have some concerns about is the sewage treatment plant, and this Public Works New South Wales has been engaged for the sewage business plan and delivery. And I expressed it at the time, I'm concerned that it's going to take at least 18 months. I am also hearing that this organisation has just delayed a neighbouring council, as in probably 12-month delay on providing reports back to that individual council with regard to their sewage works, and that was the next stage on. So I am concerned that it will run over time considerably, and we're already holding it out 18 months, and the previous council to this one, we were asking for the business plan, and we're still nowhere close to it. It'll be at least probably 12 months in, or very close to 12 months in, if they meet their deadlines. If they don't, and delay, it'll be up to 2 years until. So is there any way that we can keep on top of where they're up to? And I do understand there are other organisations. I know this is tied funding to use this particular organisation, but are we going to run out of capacity if we wait another 2 or 3 years before we get the business plan, and then you've actually got to go to design, then you've got to go to tender, etc. Whether there is enough capacity with the amount of development that is taking place in the Shire at the moment. Again, I don't expect to have an answer tonight, but it is a concern about the time potential frame, but the Director may have an answer.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I think the Director would like to comment.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, we've had regular meetings with Public Works about this. They seem to be resourced to take it on. They seem to be delayed by other councils to provide them information, so they're able to prioritise us. I guess the next stage is in the second week of April. They will be coming on site for 3 days to do some sampling and look at volumes and SCADA works. We've started our internal data gathering. It is tied to grant funding, and we are stipulated to have at least the draft report complete by December. The program indicates that this is achievable.
Good news.
Mr. Mayor, in addition to that,
GM?
that particular business plan will also directly correlate to the addendum for Millthorpe settlement strategy based on capacity. So your earlier comment about that one being kicked down, it directly correlates to that piece of strategic work as well. So it's highly likely it will have to occur after we get this.
Thank you, and great news that through to the director that they're actually moving and potentially moving a bit quicker than what we initially thought. So thank you for that update on that one. It's 5.3, the last item with regard to electric or EV charging. I was watching Temora Council the other night. They were actually listening to their council meeting because they don't have video. But they were talking about an EV charging station in the main street, similar size council, similar size town, and as far as I'm aware, they're not on a major highway. And it's probably up to the new council, but to actually have possibly two, one in Blayney, or a couple in Blayney and a couple in Millthorpe, but to actually develop EV charging stations, given that it seems to be the way of the future. There are more and more electric cars, and particularly with our tourism, so Millthorpe or Carcore even, to actually have that as a facility. But at this stage we don't, outside of the portable ones or some very slow charging ones, I think we funded probably about 3 years ago, we don't actually have any facilities, and I'm concerned we as a council area are falling behind most other areas in the state, particularly from a tourism point of view, as electric cars start to become more and more entrenched, and the service stations don't seem to be willing at this stage to actually include them in as an option. So whether there's any comment at the moment, but something that particularly the new council should hopefully embrace fairly quickly in its term.
Mr. Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a lot of work happening through the Net Zero, through the Central New South Wales JO. So there's work there in terms of looking at joint feasibility studies, joint procurement. So I believe there was a policy that went up to GMAC for endorsement, and following that there'll be some actions out of that which we can use the JO to cost effectively progress.
The next one under 5.4, investment return and earn opportunities within the Shire, and it's got review of street cleaning program, not yet commenced. I think there is a return and earn at the, so I'm not quite sure how street cleaning has got into return and earn, but maybe there is a correlation, and then it says it's not commenced. So I think there's an issue there with the, as in moving across, that it doesn't correlate across as far as I can see, but maybe there is a connection. But I think it has been commenced and been operating for be more than a year at Bernardi's, the return and earn.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Reynolds, you are correct. So there's one at IGA and there's also one at the Royal Hotel. That isn't out of alignment, and I hope councils have noticed we've actually done the DP a bit differently this time. Rather than cluster of columns, we've actually put in a lot of rows to try and clearly show statuses back to actions and strategic objectives. Previously it used to be lumped into quite hard to read points to align. So we have tried to break them down, and obviously that one has slipped through the cracks to show clear correlation.
Thank you. And that's, I think, the last item in the report. So
Well done, Councillor Reynolds. Very impressive. Councillor Somerville.
Yeah, I've just got one general comment. Like a lot of the comments in the status column were not very up to date. until I realised that this is the delivery program as at the end of December. And things that have happened in the first 3 months of this year necessarily are not in this report. So that answered a few of my questions as to why things that have happened recently are not listed in the status column.
Thank you, Councillor Sundervale. Councillors. Councillor Price-Jones.
Thanks, Mayor Ferguson. I was just interested to know what the cemetery's operational guideline, which is currently under review, was. Is it a document that we create, or is it a document that's more global than that?
The question again?
So under 5.1, sorry, it talks about in the status, cemetery's operational guideline that we create, or is it a more global one that we, that we abide by?
Very good question, and I think off the top of my head it's an internal, it's not a larger scale one, but I'd have to take that on notice for clarification.
I just thought it would be great to have with our upcoming cemetery tour. It might, obviously give people some context about what's happening, so that would be great. And I just have one other thing, just in relation to the skill set appointment. Thank you for mentioning it, but we probably need to change the words because it is no longer a council delegate anymore. So it's a competitive process, so where members get to vote. So I think it's important that we make that distinction, just so it's not confused, because we currently have 2 councils who do not have a board member representing their LGA. So I just maybe need to just update those words.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Price-Jones, you're correct. We actually can't go back because it's our endorsed delivery program. You're correct. We can't tweak those words because it was endorsed by council. So I can't tweak that to pick up minor stuff like that. We picked that up as well when we were reviewing it, but we can't go back. We'll have to update it when we update it as part of the IPNR process with the new council.
So I can't do a motion to get it updated beforehand, like to bring it to the fore, because it would seem, I don't know, it's relevant and it probably should have been updated. If this is a document that was as at December, it should have been updated before then, like before December, because we knew then how the process was running.
Mr. Mayor, leave that with me and let's take that offline because it would need 28-day exhibition, so let me look at that and work out if we can do that.
From me.
Questions or comments, councillors? I have a mover. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Move now through to page 31, item 7, Youth Week 2024. Recommendation there, 1 and 2.
Wait, Scott. Just wait.
Move a second. We'll just note that Tiff has declared an interest and is leaving the chamber. Thank you. Council's now back to Youth Week. Item 7. Recommendations there, 1 and 2. Do I have a mover for these recommendations? Councillor Price-Jones has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Reynolds has seconded. Councillors, questions, comments in regards to Youth Week coming up? Councillor Price-Jones.
So I just need to get some information clarified for me, please, in relation to the way it's presented. So I understand, and obviously forgive me if I'm wrong, and we're now missing Tiffany, so she probably could have answered this question. So I understand that we had $6,000 budgeted for the program, that the cost was $5,755 based on the submissions received. So there's a couple of $100 difference. But we're also receiving some grant money of $2,588, of which we've got a match, and we're also receiving $824, which those figures, 2,588 from the grants program, 2,588 from us, and 824 add up to the 6,000 that's budgeted. How do we budget? Like when we do a budget, I would have thought that was our our budget, not including of grant money, that we wouldn't necessarily have had, or did we already have it when we did the budget? It just seems a little bit obscure to me. Might be just the way it's written.
Mr. Mayor, I believe it's an annual recurring grant. So my understanding is that's how it's traditionally matched. But I'd have to take it on notice to get the specific answer. My understanding that's how it is, been traditionally run, where we would match approximately that allocation, and that's how we would budget for it.
I'm sorry, so you're saying that the 2588 is an annual allocation and then we matching it?
Yeah, that's my understanding. So I don't know whether it's that exact amount, but there is generally an annual allocation, and then it's dollar for dollar, so we match for it and we allow for that. That's my understanding. Yeah.
I just would have thought that would have, the grant funding would be a bonus, and therefore we wouldn't have used our 6,000 allocation, and therefore we wouldn't be putting all of that into advertising and promotion, is the way I kind of read that. But good to get some clarity around that.
Ms Jones, councillors, Youth Week. Any further questions or comments? Have a mover, have a seconder. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Declared carried. Could we invite the acting director back into the room? Okay, councillors, now draw your attention. Infrastructure Services Monthly Report. There's a recommendation there. Note this report. Do I have a mover for this recommendation, councillors? Councillor Price-Jones has moved that way. Councillor Somervale has seconded that. Councillors, questions or comments in regards to the Infrastructure Services Monthly Report? Everyone's looking at Councillor Reynolds. Thank you. Councillor Reynolds, you have the floor.
Happy for Councillor Somervale to go ahead of me.
Councillor Somerville, let's mix it up a little bit tonight. Would you like to question or comment in regards to the infrastructure report?
Yeah, I just I read the comment in relation to the Belubula Way Bridge about removing that tree, which is very prominent and very dangerous. And I see that we're leaving it till April to minimise habitat impact. And then having read that, I was reminded of the email the director sent the other day about the tree on Gap Road, where it's not going to be removed because of habitat impact of the removal. So I just wonder where the consistency is between the Gap Road tree and the Belubula Way tree.
Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the Belubula Way tree poses a significant red tree that is leaning into the roadway. The tree on Gap Road is different, as it's a healthy tree that's not leaning into the roadway. So they're the main two distinctions. Because the tree on Belubula Way poses a risk in that it could fall at any time in the roadway, we've been forced to act in terms of preemptive measures to remove it. So there was some species identified inhabiting that tree. They're not vulnerable species, they're nesting birds that are quite common, but we've been recommended to wait to allow those to leave. So again, the fauna inhabiting is also different. It's not a vulnerable species in that tree.
I think that was... I was just wondering, sorry, there is one other one. In the open spaces and facilities section, Um, the first paragraph talks about tree maintenance at the Newbridge Showground, which is good, and some new plantings there. I'm just wondering what the new plantings were, and are they trees intended to provide shade for people using the showground?
Through you, Mr Mayor, councillors may recall that as part of the Newbridge footpath work, we committed that we would repurpose some of the mulch and to establish a sort of a native offset to those two trees that were removed in Trunky Street. So the work that we've done there is the commencement of that garden bed for that. That's a mixed variety of trees that hasn't fully been planted. It's away from areas that would normally provide shading, but there'd be some shading eventually once they establish.
Sounds like they won't provide too much shade. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Director. Councillor Goswich.
Just say on the open spaces one, Heritage Park's toilets, it says council's still waiting for decision from Regional New South Wales on the transfer of funds. If those funds don't come, we have to then make a budget adjustment to pay for those toilets?
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Goswich, we received confirmation today from Regional New South Wales that those funds can be transferred, so I've signed that and put that back.
Thank you.
To wait, Councillor Reynolds, if that's all right. Councillor Price-Jones.
Sorry, thanks, Mayor Ferguson. I just, in relation to that same question, so am I understanding that the maybe there was some excess money from the toilets that's now being moved from Regional New South Wales to the KGO upgrade project? So we're moving funds that we no longer need because of the downgrading of them? Is that how I'm reading that, or have I missed something completely?
Mr Mayor, Councillor Price-Jones, so there was a review done of the Heritage Park toilets and review that we could pull back on that allocation, and then under the same fund we sought to allocate them to King George Oval. Yes.
Why do we need to allocate more funds to King George Oval?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there was, in several workshops it was identified that there was an overspend there to finish that last car park due to latent conditions in the previous two, and that those funds will be able to capture that shortfall without extracting money from the general fund.
And can I ask how much that amount is, if we have that now sorted? How much the overspend? I missed a couple of workshops, so probably just...
Mr. It's $150,000, which has been transferred from the Heritage Park toilet block to Carrington to the King George Oval car park project.
Councillor Reynolds, been very patient over there. Thank you.
I'm very happy to let some other councillors do some talking for a little while, rest my voice. Firstly, just going back to the tree on Gap Road, from my observation of the photo I took, there's actually a very substantial limb dead that goes straight across the road. So if there is an issue with dead limbs, then I think we seriously need to look at this Gap Road tree. It's coming straight across the road, probably near the lowest, it appears from my photo. I didn't look at it on the day, but and just looking at it on the computer again here, I did observe the other day this dead limb. So just for consistency, if we're looking at dead limbs versus dead trees, as in at the bare minimum, we probably should be taking that dead limb down off the Gap Road. But I also, on that issue, and it's not in the business paper, but to actually come up with a solution, whether, and I have had a discussion with the General Manager, whether a wire rope or something else is a barrier if the road is not wide enough, to put it around to protect any vehicles, particularly, and I did have a long conversation with the captain of the Car Corps Bush Fire Brigade. That individual was concerned about, particularly during fog, that and the proximity of the tree to the the roadside. But I suspect there'll be further discussions at a later date. That wasn't what I actually wanted to talk about. First question is, though, the Plum Palmer Orange Road footpath, which we have delayed, and we've done some preliminary drainage work from what I understand in the report here. I am concerned with the materials sitting in Frog Hollow area that has got bunting around it, the risk to council that someone might go and procure them at night. Maybe a camera there, I don't know, but as in steel is quite valuable, and reinforced steel, etc. So I'm just sort of wondering if we're going to delay it for an extended period of time, maybe we should take that framework back to the depot for a period of time, just so that we don't have a report coming back that something was removed or a number of sheets have been removed of that material. Questions, though, in relation to the director's area. Heavy patching. We do have a budget, and it was reduced a bit because of Garland Road, and then I think that money was taken back to, was it Neville Road or Barry Road, one of those roads. But I think there's still around about $400,000 in the budget for heavy patching in the Shire of roads. I'm just wondering any update on what areas or what roads that money will be used for in the next couple of months before we get out of the roadwork season.
Take that one on notice. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
The next question I've got is, I noticed we did a fair bit of bitumen sealing, and I assume in the next report there'll probably be an update on what roads we resealed, so I assume I'll just wait for the next report on that one. And the third question, coming back out of the QBRS of the last council meeting, the gravel resheeting, again, an update on what roads, and the director may not have an answer tonight, but an update of what roads we've gravel resheeted, what roads we are aiming to resheet to use the funds. We may have used them all, I don't know, in the next month or two before it gets, again, too wet to actually do some roadworks. Well, it may get too wet to do some roadworks, but yeah, an update to councillors would be good to know which roads have been, and if there are any further roads to be resheeted, those dirt roads across the Shire. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, Councillor Somerville.
There's one other matter I forgot to mention previously, which I think is pretty important. It's an issue for the next council, but under assets, there's a comment there that we're starting work on the 2025 revaluation of the transport asset class. I remember the previous council when we did this last time round. This is a pretty important exercise because it feeds into our depreciation. And those who were around at the time might remember we went off to Morrison Lowe for them to review the approach we'd adopted, and they made a whole lot of recommendations, the result of which was to reduce the amount by which we were revaluing our transport assets. And I think the saving in depreciation, and therefore the benefit to our bottom line, was something like $700,000 or $750,000, and Tiff's nodding there. So this is a really, really big issue item. And I know it's only just starting now, but I just want to reinforce the importance of making sure that we don't unnecessarily overestimate the value of our assets by conditions and useful lives, because it will turn out to be really, really important. And one reason I think it's important that we remember the past, lest we forget, is that I think Jeff Payton was largely involved in that revaluation exercise, and of course he's now left. So we don't have any institutional knowledge in relation to some of the issues that came up last time. So I just mention that now because it's only just starting, but it's best to be on top of it early rather than come back to bite us later on.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Very good point. Okay, Councillor Reynolds.
Just as a supplementary to Councillor Somervale's comments, I was watching another council meeting of Cabon recently, and the auditor, their financials were late because of, very understandable, because of the circumstances that Shire has encountered, so they only presented them in February. But the auditor was at the council meeting, and one of the things that Cabon actually did was a devaluation. I think it was about $20 million of roads. So they didn't write the roads off, but they devalued those roads last financial year. So it didn't come in the bottom line as a write-off, but it came as a devaluation of approximately $20 million in the assets, the road assets across the Shire. Whether our roads are in the same circumstances, probably unlikely. Councils can do it without actually impacting on the... and then the asset was... depreciated at a lower value, so it had a lesser impact. So it's something that council, with our auditors, potentially have a look at on some of the roads. If once this X-raying is done, shows up particular road conditions that we didn't expect or that were unknown. So it's just something that was highlighted. The other thing that was highlighted, and I think it's also been highlighted from our auditor in the past, who's the same firm but a different auditor, was that the transport assets are now, and the CFO stroke acting director tonight might be able to elaborate a little bit more, are increased in depreciation valuation, so therefore the depreciation I think was about 3.5%, rather than having a big lump sum every 5 years increase in valuation, that we are now doing it on an annual basis. So I'd just check if that, for clarification, whether that is the actual case.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There is actually a requirement under the accounting standards that you review the fair value of your assets every year. So what's happened in the past couple of years is due to the high inflation and the increases in the building construction index, that's actually forced what they deem a material variation to the fair value, and so that's why you've seen that indexation the last couple of years. So presumably if it's below that kind of 5%, that'll start to normalise out. But again, still that requirement to review that and sign off every year that there hasn't been a material increase.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Okay, councillors, any further questions or comments in regards to the Infrastructure Services Monthly Report? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Moving on to page 37, item 9, data sharing agreement between Council and Spatial Services. Recommendation there, councillors. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Goswich has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Councillors, questions or comments in regards to this item? Councillor Price-Jones.
Just really a question, because I don't probably totally understand it.
That makes two of us, I think.
That might be the quick answer. If someone's really good across the space, they might just give us a quick paragraph about what that...
Who would like to give a very brief overview? I think all councillors would appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, where this has come about is the need through the previous natural disasters for one source of truth across the state for GIS and certain reporting. We do have an existing agreement with Spatial Services. It's a bit ad hoc and it's quite manual. Previously, Spatial Services haven't come to the table to allow something like this, and now with work of the JO, we're able to integrate data across our GIS system, so it's across and automatically updating. So it's doing limited things now, but it works towards the work that we're doing to have a digital twin with the state government in terms of road networks, sharing some data on road condition, so that when say, Transport for New South Wales or other councils are planning detours or routes, they can properly assess where they're going to send traffic in coordination with the information that other governments provide.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mr. Director. Very good. Very important. Okay, councillors, any further questions or comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Declared? Carried. Oh, I hadn't called it, but I'm sorry. I apologise for missing you, Councillor Somervale. You had a question.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. It's just at the risk of setting a record for the most detailed comment of this council term, in the draft agreement, which is on the annexures in clause 4.1, there's a cross-reference to clause 3.2, which should be to clause 4.2.
Very much appreciate, and I think that is the record. Congratulations, Councillor Somervale. If there's no further questions or comments in regards to this item, I will now put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Councillors now move through to page 40. Item 10, the erection of a dwelling, 109 Prescott Street, Lyndhurst. Recommendation there. Councillors, do I have a mover for this recommendation? You'll know there's, just please look at the screens. Councillors, a slight amendment which the Director may speak to. So we have two there. So we have 1 and 2. Maybe the Director would like to speak to it.
Thank you, Mr.
First, councillors. Thank you,
Yep,
Mr.
thank you,
Director.
Mayor. At the top of page number 57 in the business paper, fourth line down where the line commences with EnviroWest Consulting reference number R477, etc., 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 and it follows on from there. It's actually the wrong reference number. So what we're proposing to do is actually just put that reference number being R6110E dated 13th October and leave that sentence at that, and that will correct that where the gremlins did.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director.
That nearly beats my record.
It's getting close, but I think you've got it, Councillor Somervale. So with that explanation from the Director, I will now call for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds, and a seconder, Councillor Goswich. Councillors, questions or comments in regards to this development application? Forward to me, Councillor Reynolds.
Very happy to support the recommendation and the proposal, as in to fill in and while it doesn't meet all the conditions, as in I think it where it's located, it's a good recommendation, so fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any further questions or comments? I have a mover, I have a seconder. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. A call for a division. Let the minutes show that the decision was unanimous. Move now through to page 61, item 11. Erection of a shed to Queen Street, Lyndhurst. There's recommendation there. Councillors, do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Somervale has moved that way, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ewan has seconded that. Councillors, questions, comments in regards to this development application? Councillor Somervale.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I support the recommendation, despite the fact it's a very big departure from our DCP. It's if this goes through, it's the sort of cumulative floor area of the sheds will be something like 3 times what the DCP says is the limit. It's been advertised. We've had no objections. It doesn't seem to be too offensive to me, so I'm happy to support it. But I do want to make the comment that when we're reviewing our DCP, one thing we need to recognise is that in our Shire, particularly in rural residential areas and in our villages, our property owners like sheds, and I don't know where our excuse me, DCP standard came from, which sort of model DCP we used to develop ours, but it seems to me probably it came from a shire that didn't have the love of sheds that our residential ratepayers seem to have. So when we're reviewing our DCP, we obviously need to increase the acceptable footprint of sheds on a lot. So I just make that comment because I think in all of my time on council where we've approved departures from the DCP, it's been the proposed floor area of sheds which has probably contributed to about 70% of the departures.
Absolutely correct, Councillor Sunval, and there is a long history in regards to shed approvals around the Shire, and the review of the DCP will be an opportunity to look at that, to make that clearer. For me personally, it's as much about the height of the shed as opposed to the footprint as well, but certainly needs reviewing, and we're certainly going to see more and more of them. Councillors, I have a mover, I have a seconder. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a bit torn here because this is really, as Councillor Somerville highlighted, really drawing out to nearly 3 times the floor space, and I do concur with you. Height also has a huge impact. Excuse me. And in a village, I am a little concerned we may be setting a precedent that we're really going out. So we'll permit in villages 3 times the size, and because this council on this particular day did. So that's the one concern. On the other side, there were no objections by the neighbour, and it was reasonably close to the neighbour. So in weighing everything up, while we're probably going to set a precedent, I'll support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any further questions or comments in regards to this item? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. A call for a division. Let the record show decision was unanimous. Councillors, moving through now to page 78, item 12, Central Tablelands Weeds Authority Delegate Report. There's a recommendation there from our delegate, being Councillor Reynolds. A recommendation there. Who would like to move that? Oh, Councillor Ewan has jumped in and moved it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Price-Jones, happy to second that. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor. And a lot's been done, and I think it's important to actually acknowledge Blayney Shire Council with regard to roadside weed control and the support of staff and the councillors to actually try and get on top, for the first time since I've been on council, a substantial area of roadside has been controlled. I was talking with the Chief Biosecurity Officer for the Weeds Authority this afternoon. They've just had to put the last about $10,000 worth of work from the Cadia Flyers Creek contribution on hold while an aerial program is undertaken, which is underway today, the first day. Not quite sure if it's in our Shire. I didn't actually ask which of the 4 LGAs the helicopter was flying in. There's also some private work being undertaken around the area as well. But for the first time since I've been on council, we can potentially see, we're never going to eradicate these priority weeds, but we're getting to the stage where within Blayney Shire Council area, we'll be able to manage them and manage them reasonably effectively, and also from a financial contribution, once we get through the next financial year, the authority and the council can pretty well keep on top of them at not a huge cost to ratepayers. Whereas we've had to, if you include the Cadia / Flyers Creek contribution for the sticky nightshade program, I think it's nearly 4 times the money that was made in the previous financial year available. But we are a standout, may I say, and I'm not being critical of the other councils, and they've got their own challenges, but a lot of the other councils are not even going to get towards a third of their weeds covered. We are probably going to be very, very close to 50%, maybe just slightly under, but around about 50% of our roadside weeds priority weeds control in the first year. So we are providing something back to our ratepayers, our constituents in Blayney Shire in getting this. And this has been an ongoing conversation that a number of landholders have had with me as a councillor, I'm sure with other councillors in the chamber, about the roadside control. So that's a real feather in Blayney Shire's cap, but also in the Weeds Authority's cap. So that's the major highlight I'd like to highlight out of it. But the Weeds Authority as a whole is, to some extent, getting on top of some landholders in taking action to make them comply with the Biosecurity Act, and that's the obligation of every landholder, is to comply and manage your priority weeds. Doesn't mean you've got to eradicate, but you need to manage, and also to help protect your neighbours. As in, we're all in it together. So whether it's rail, and I'll come to rail in a moment, or roadsides, or Crown land, which is another challenge, or forestry. But those partners are coming on board and are starting to work with the Central Tablelands Weeds Authority when it comes to weeds management. And talking of rail, and I've had a couple of discussions with UGL Rail, the person for the Central West, Tom, about the line, and people in Blayney Township may notice the Blayney to Drumongal line has been cleaned up. We haven't seen the control of the priority weeds, in particular blackberries, but we've seen the removal of the bushes. And in a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago with that individual, they've said that they are committed to coming back next year and any regrowth, actually getting on top of it, but the bushes were too big and looked very untidy. If you came through Blayney from the Friskies side, so the Nestle plant, went over the overhead bridge, you would see a lot of blackberry bushes. They've now all gone. So there is a strategy, and also the Western line through. There's still Millthorpe to be done. The UGL Rail has run out of money at the moment to get to Millthorpe. They've got part way from Blayney up through to Millthorpe, but they are actually applying internally for some more funds to hopefully get through to Orange before the control season finishes, but there were no guarantees that those funds would be available. There is still an issue in Millthorpe, and particularly around the woodbine factory on the rail corridor, where there are huge numbers of blackberries. So something that, again, the authority and myself as a councillor have been trying to make sure that we're all working together to get outcomes. There are still challenges in forestry, whether it's around Mount Macdonald, Mount Macquarie, or in the Cadia area, where two of our biggest forestry areas are, but there is also some around the Kings Plains area, in managing priority weeds, particularly sticky nightshade around that Cadia area. But I am seeing an improvement. I am seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and one of the things I will be proud to see at the end of this term as a councillor, that we have moved a long way forward in Blayney Shire in the management, I won't say control, but the management of the priority weeds in our shire. Hopefully a number of landholders will come with us as well. So I commend the report to council, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reynolds, and we'd certainly like to congratulate the Weeds Authority for this new program, and obviously, as you've just expressed, it has been very successful, and I would expect it to be very well supported and appreciated by our rural landholders. Councillors, any questions or comments? All good. I think you covered it pretty well, Councillor Reynolds. Thank you. I have a move, I have a seconder. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Draw your attention to page 83, item 13, the Canobola Zone New South Wales Rural Fire Service Bushfire Liaison Committee Delegate Report, again authored by Councillor Reynolds. Recommendation there. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Reynolds would like to move that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Price-Jones. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor. I think probably the most important thing is for our CFO to note the improvements outside of the Blayney station, that there are, before the end of the financial year, a couple of other improvements. Luckily, I suppose you could say it's concrete, and which is very low depreciation, so it should hopefully have a minimal impact on our profit and loss for the financial year. But Neville and Lyndhurst. Both the aprons at the front of the sheds, RFS is proposing to construct new aprons for truck access in and out. Their actual report said Mandurama, but if you go and have a look at the Mandurama station, it already has very lovely concrete entrance for the station, and I did clarify, and they were actually talking about Lyndhurst as where they would spend the money. Now, it's also noted here Kings Plains, that they were going to allocate $60,000. Now, the Kings Plains station is actually in Bathurst Regional Council area. It's just over the border, but that was the location where they built that station. Because it's on a lease, and it's not secure, they've decided not to progress in allocating that $60,000 to create an apron at the front of the Kings Plains station. So the station is still operational, it's still located in its current location in Bathurst Regional Council at pretty well the top of Fitzgerald's Mount. But that money has been looked at moving, but I don't think at the time of the meeting, which I report here, they haven't actually got a home for it. The only station that is not built in Blayney Shire at this point in time is Penuara. In preliminary discussions that I have had with the Canobolas zone at a meeting or two ago, it is potentially on the radar, but not in the near future. And again, it would become another asset of council and another depreciable asset of council. But it's not a high priority at this stage where they're housing the trucks for the Penuara area is satisfactory. But they're potentially looking at the tennis courts area in Penuara, so where the community facility is down the track. So just something to foreshadow. And hopefully the Blayney station in the industrial area will be operational very shortly. There were some defects that needed repairs, but the indication I have received is that it probably won't be till about September, October, before there is actually a formal opening of that station, where there will also be a medal ceremony taking place. So it'll probably be the new council that sees that station open, because it's been a very long build during pretty well. I think the station actually started in the previous council, and the relocation from the location where the fire and rescue have now taken over as their station. So, but that's only the formalities. I believe the brigade, as soon as the defects have been finished, can move into that station. I don't have a date, and I don't know if the general manager has heard any more since last conversations on when that station will be open.
A comment in regards to the fire station?
Through Mr Mayor, Councillor Runs, I don't have an update on the Blayney Fire Station, no, or RFS station.
The other important comment is about hazard reductions. We have been very proactive. Some of the other councillors in the Canobolas zone weren't quite as proactive. I noticed actually Cabon on my road only slashed in the last week in the Cabon section, where we've slashed it twice during the fire season. So again, the proactive nature of the Blayney Council has been noted by the Rural Fire Service. I did also ask, within Lyndhurst, there have been a few comments, and maybe, I don't know if it's stretching it to say complaints, with regard to the highway. Transport for New South Wales were in attendance at the last Bushfire Management Committee meeting, which is as opposed to the liaison that I'm reporting on here. And I did ask the delegate from Transport for New South Wales about hazard reduction. They said they'd taken on notice, but they'd only done 1,900 square metres in the Canobolas zone. And if you do the maths, say a metre, I think it was 1,900 square metres, it's only really, say, 2 kilometres or a kilometre either side of one section of the highway. It's negligible. So, but again, I did ask, and the Canobolas manager, Brett Bowden, did say that he would make further inquiries about whether Lyndhurst could receive some form of a special hazard reduction on the highway, just to knock down the Phalaris, where residents aren't mowing the sides of the highway. So it was taken on notice because that is a high-risk pathway, the highway, and particularly that could create problems. So anyway, it was taken on notice, and I'll report back to council when I hear any more about Lyndhurst and potential hazard reduction on the Mid-Western Highway in that village sometime in the future. Outside of that, fleet replacements in Blayney Shire at this stage, no trucks have been replaced, but there may be one or two. It's just on delivery of when new trucks or upgraded trucks are available. The RFSO is moving towards new trucks. And I think the rest of the report pretty well speaks for itself, so I'll leave it there, Mayor.
Thank you very much for that overview, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any further questions or comments for Councillor Reynolds? Pretty comprehensive report. Thank you very much. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Declared carried. Councillors, we do have matter to be dealt with in closed committee. So in accordance with the Local Government Act 93 and the Local Government Regulation 2021, in the opinion of the General Manager, the following business is of a kind as referred to in section 10.2 of the Act and should be dealt with in part of the closed to the media and public. Item 14, Contract W2 2023 Asset Management of Sewer Pipes. This matter is considered to be confidential under Section 10A of the Local Government Act as it deals with commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it. May I have a mover that we go into closed committee? Thank you. Councillor Goswich has moved that way. Councillor Price-Jones has seconded that.
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. We'll now go into closed committee. Okay, councillors, we are now back into open council and we've considered item 14, contract W2 2023 asset management of sewer pipes. The recommendation which was approved was that Council 1 accept the contract with Interflow Proprietary Limited for the asset management of sewer pipes of the following separable proportions. A, condition assessment of gravity sewer and stormwater mains using CCTV. B, smoke testing of sewer service lines. And C, pipe relining. 2, authorise the General Manager to approve an extension contract period to the 30th of June 2025. Councillors, that concludes our business here this evening. I thank you all much for your attendance and I declare the meeting closed.